So it's pretty well known that CD Projekt Red not only makes high-quality role-playing games, but they also aren't afraid to tackle mature themes, visuals, and storytelling, and this is something that a lot of people appreciate about the studio. They just tell the story without holding too much back, and a lot of the mature content featured in their games tend to be there for a purpose because they're trying to tell a specific story and to great effect. Now, the same will apply for Cyberpunk 2077. Based on the footage we have seen, it's pretty obvious that this is going to be a pretty mature game. But just how mature, some of you might be asking? Well, apparently in Brazil, Cyberpunk 2077 has been rated 18+, according to the following Reddit post, which linked to a page that is no longer available. If you click on the link now, you'll find an error, 404 not found, but people took a screenshot of this page before it was taken down, and if we scroll down here, you'll find a translation of what that page indicated about the title. So let's go through the classification of this game in Brazil. It reads right here, analysis summary, title in Brazil, Cyberpunk 2077, intended classification, not recommended for under 18, so this is an 18+ title, platforms, PC, PS4, Xbox One, yada, 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 all this information we kind of know about. And then here are all of the different descriptors of Cyberpunk 2077 that made it gain the rating that it did. So it reads right here, weapons without violence, this is an everyone classification, moderate or hinted use of illicit drug, this is everyone, and then we go up to the 10+ age tier, where it reads weapon with violence, criminal action without violence, description of consume or consumption of illicit drugs, derogatory language, verbal aggression, and then here we delve into 12+, violent acts, sexual pleasurement, that's an interesting way of putting that, consumption of illicit drugs, violence description, exposure to danger, exposure to death corpse, body injury, foul language, sexual language, blood, and then 14+ descriptors include description of illicit drug consumption or trafficking, sexualization, sexual exploitation, intentional death, nudity, prostitution, sexual relationship. Next up, we have 16+ descriptors, consumption of illicit drugs, mutilation, intense sexual relation, suicide, and then finally, the thing that drove it to an 18+ rating is something they simply describe as cruelty, whatever that means. I don't know if this is potentially referencing, elements of torture, players doing that on other NPCs or NPCs doing that to you. But I guess none of this stuff is really surprising given the setting of Cyberpunk 2077. And based on the footage we have seen, that intro segment of the first gameplay demo we saw, you walk into this sort of surgery area where the scavengers have ripped open people's bodies and their guts are spilling out, and you're also seeing sort of cyberware components sort of jutting out because the scavengers are extracting that from those bodies. And then you eventually find various bodies in this bathtub full of ice water, and you pick one up and she's completely naked and she looks like she's suffering. It's pretty grim stuff just in that intro segment alone. Drugs obviously are going to be a big thing with gangs involved. Foul language, yeah, there's plenty of that involved in what little footage we have seen of Cyberpunk 2077. There's going to be a lot of sexual sort of visuals and themes and mature sort of sights to behold, I'm sure, given the setting that is Cyberpunk, and given that a big aspect of that world is exploitation of people and corporate exploitation of society as a whole. But beyond that, CD Projekt Red has hinted at how you'll be able to formulate relationships with certain NPCs and how Cyberpunk 2077 will feature mocapped mature scenes, intimate scenes, but it probably won't be to a point where in the US with the ESRB it'll be rated adults only. It probably won't be like a hot coffee type of thing, but do expect mature visuals and implications of intimate activities. And then right here we have an article from 2018 in which CD Projekt Red talked about how Cyberpunk 2077 will include full nudity for a very important reason. And a lot of that has to do with the world, the setting of Cyberpunk, and the themes surrounding, humanity versus machinery, and the synergy between the two, and what it is to be human, and just all of that ties into the flesh, and whether replacing all of that with cybernetic parts, whether that's something that is stripping away your humanity, things of that nature. And then you've got visuals like this right here that garnered plenty of controversy, although most, I think, reasonable people will understand that this also ties well into the setting of Cyberpunk, where corporations exploit human imagery and sexuality and all of these things to sell their products, and that's also something that happens in real life, except in Cyberpunk, the barrier between genders are blurred because you can just get cybernetic enhancements, change your body however you want. This is a society in which body part replacement comes much easier than it is in our contemporary real-life world, and so people kind of do whatever they want to their body, and it's about the moral ambiguity surrounding that. But you get the idea. There's plenty of mature themes to look forward to in this title, to a point where Brazil has rated this game 18+. And once this information began to spread, one of the developers for Cyberpunk 2077 actually responded. So here's a tweet by Pavel Sasko, who is the lead quest designer for Cyberpunk 2077 and also worked on Witcher 3. He's actually the main man behind the Bloody Baron quest, the one involving the miscarriage with the fetus that transforms into this demon spawn. Yep, that quest. So the guy who was responsible for that simply responded to all this with, "You surprised? We don't fuck around." Which, coming from this guy, I believe him. I certainly do believe him. Now, here we have an article from news outlet US Gamer that describes Brazil's rating system. So it reads right here, Brazil's advisory rating system is unified across video games, film, and television. It assigns one of 6 ratings, L for all ages, 10+, 12+, 14+, 16+, and 18+, based on a list of criteria that are logged for each age range. And then after highlighting some of the descriptors that this game received, the article adds that many of the aspects for which Cyberpunk 2077 only earns a 14+ or 16+ rating, such as depiction of illegal drug use and the inclusion of sexually explicit scenes, would likely bump it up to a mature 17+ rating under the American ESRB. That is indeed true. Cruelty is the only line, it seems, Cyberpunk 2077 crosses into 18+ territory. The English language version of the guide defines it as covering any realistic scenes of violence in a sadistic way and which inflicts intense physical pain. So for those who are wondering what exactly did they mean by cruelty, well, this is the description they have for that. This paragraph finally concludes with, there are several 18+ violence criteria and a few for drug use and sexuality that seemingly are not crossed in Cyberpunk 2077. Now, interestingly enough, from what I've seen, Witcher 3 in Brazil garnered a 16+ rating. So here's a screenshot of the box art, and you can see right here the 16 rating. So for whatever reason in Brazil, Cyberpunk 2077 is deemed to be a more mature game than Witcher 3. Speaking of ratings boards, Adam Badowski did say back in March 2020 that they had just submitted Cyberpunk 2077 to age rating agencies around the world, PEGI, ESRB, etc. And then fast forward to April, and Adam Badowski, who is, for those who don't know, head of CD Projekt Red, he said, very happy to share some progress on this, referring to the ratings boards. Cyberpunk 2077 has already been rated by the vast majority of rating boards around the world, and from the looks of it, they're generally pretty happy with the results. In Brazil, it got an 18+ rating, but 18+ rating games are sold in that country, and then in the US, I suspect they'll teeter the line at mature rating and won't go to adults only, because adults only titles aren't sold on major platforms in the US. Now, there may be certain countries that are already notorious for banning games that contain certain mature themes and visuals, like Australia, and countries like that may force CD Projekt Red to change certain aspects of the game to fit those specific countries. but it feels like most countries around the world will just sell this game. But yeah, there you have it, folks. Everything you need to know about the game's classification in Brazil, various descriptors that describe some of the elements we can expect in Cyberpunk 2077, and yeah, Pavel Sasko doesn't really even seem to care about hiding this. CD Projekt Red doesn't really tend to hold back when it comes to what they want to express visually, thematically, and narratively. And I'm glad to see that carry forth with Cyberpunk 2077. Looking forward to the game. In the meantime, while we wait for the title's release later this year, let me know in the comments below what your thoughts and opinions are on all of these descriptors and the rating it received in Brazil compared to Witcher 3's rating. Drop a comment, and to be further updated on all things gaming news, reviews, and discussions, stay tuned right here on Young Yeah. I'll see you guys next time. Young out.